Hello, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. My name is Marilag Dimatulak and you are watching Azure User Group Manila's first meetup for 2022. Thank you for joining us today. Azure User Group Manila is for anyone interested in learning Microsoft Azure, and our goal here is to share knowledge and experiences in designing and building and running cloud applications and take advantage of the powerful features of Microsoft Azure services. And we aim to have regular meetups and workshops and hackathons where we can code together and solve problems and have fun building world-class solutions. We cater to Filipino developers, IT ops, architects, DevOps, and tech enthusiasts. So I hope you can keep on joining our group, our meetups, our virtual meetups for now. So hopefully some point this year we can also host live meetups. But for now, we're here on YouTube and on Facebook. And please join us, our group on meetup.com. You can look for Azure User Group Manila. We also have a Facebook group and Twitter account. So please help us grow the community and be part of our events. We're also always looking for volunteers and for speakers and partners. So please, if you want to support us, please reach out to us in our different channels. So today I'm very excited because we have our first guest speaker for the year, and it's a topic that I really like. It's all about Azure Active Directory and the identity management solutions from James. So let me invite James, our speaker, on stage now. Hello there, James. Hi, how are
Hi.
you?
Hi.
Magandang
Yeah.
hapon.
Hi, Marilag. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Thank you for
Actually, it's
joining
about
us today.
already evening here in Manila.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
6:30.
Welcome. Thanks you
Yes.
for inviting me also. Yes, right.
No worries. Thank you for volunteering and thank you for sharing your knowledge. I'm sure it's going to be very helpful for the community. And I really like this topic. I also talked about Microsoft Identity before in my previous talks. So I'm
Mhm.
really interested to hear and learn from you today.
Okay. That's great.
All right.
Actually,
Yeah. So just wanted to thank our viewers right now and also maybe the viewers of the recording. Just want to let you know that this session will be recorded so you can catch it again on YouTube anytime you want, and also on Facebook. So if you're not yet a member of our Facebook group and our meetup group, please join us. And I know medyo maraming nangyayari sa mundo ngayon, like with, we're getting out of hopefully the pandemic. I'm not feeling well myself right now, but the show must go on,
mhm.
and there's a lot of things happening in Europe, as you might have heard already, with Ukraine. So it's a little bit again fun times, but show must go on. We should keep on learning, and we should
Yeah.
still keep on upskilling ourselves. So thanks, James, for being with us today.
Yeah,
I'll let
sure.
you get
My
started,
pleasure.
and thank you very much. So if you can just share your screen and I'll put it up on
Okay.
stage.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
I think I have to share my screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there.
All right, here
I'm
we
sorry. I thought
go.
I have. Yeah, okay.
All right.
So, hi,
Okay.
everyone. Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. So, welcome to the Azure Manila Group virtual meetup. And today I'll be discussing with you an overview of Azure Managed Identity and Access. So, security is number one priority of all of us in the IT industry. So, whether you are a developer, a solutions architect or in the IT operations, security will always be our number one priority, especially on the mission critical applications and the cloud native workloads up there in Microsoft Azure that consume multiple Azure services. So we need to ensure that these applications and instances on different services can securely talk to each other. And the credentials should not be exposed when you access the code. So in this session, I'll be showing you how to use the Azure Managed Identities for Azure resources to securely connect other instances of Azure services without the need for storing any user credentials in your code. So, but first, let me introduce myself. So, my name is James Joseph Santos. So, right there. And I'm a senior database administrator at Claro. And the current skill sets are Teradata Database and Microsoft SQL Server Database. But right now, I'm more on Teradata database skills. But I do also have background in SQL databases because that's my skills on my previous employment. So I help my colleagues in the IT industry prepare for certification exams through knowledge sharing, just like this event. And in my office, I do always conduct uh, proud bag sessions to help my colleagues pass the certification exams. And here are my current certifications uh, in Azure and AWS Cloud practitioner. And on my free time, I love spending time with my family, like helping my kids in their home online work, online school activities. And my hobbies includes photography, bowling, and playing guitar. So, all right. So let's start. Here's an overview of my topic. So, what is managed identity? Um, Two types of managed identity: Azure services that supports managed identities, and I'll be conducting a demo. And the last part is the Q&A session. Okay. So again, what's the managed identity? Managed identities. This is according to the official Microsoft documentation. Is for managed identities for Azure resources is a feature of Azure Active Directory. So that feature provides Azure services with an automatically managed identity in Azure AD. So you will be, instead of using the user credentials like service accounts or SAS or access token, and worry of the changing password every time and recycling the tokens. So an alternative way and most safer way to use is this the managed identity for Azure AD. I don't need to maintain user account credentials and other token access to use this feature in Azure. And also this is part of the Azure Active Directory. So when you this is ready to use, just create a user account or provision an Active Directory Azure, and you'll be using you'll this is ready to use afterwards. So here are the two types of managed identity. First is the system assigned, which is enabled directly on Azure Service Instance. And upon the creation of this system assignment, it creates the identity in the Azure AD. Also, the credentials are provisioned on the instance. And the lifecycle is directly tied to the Azure Service Instance, meaning when you create a virtual machine and assign a system identity on it, you can use that identity for that certain virtual machine only, and you cannot pass that identity to other Azure resources. And if you delete that the virtual machine, the identity is also delete with that virtual machine. So the second one is the user assigned identity. So it is created as a standalone resource, and Azure creates an identity in Azure AD tenant. So, and also identity can be assigned to one or more Azure service instances. And the life cycle is managed separately from the life cycle of the Azure service. So meaning you can assign these instances in multiple resources, and this is not dependent on the Azure resource that you create. You can simply delete that resource. Example, the virtual machine. If you delete that virtual machine, the user assigned managed identity is not deleted with it, and you can assign it to another resource. Okay, so here are the Azure services that supports managed identity as of this time. But I think this is growing. And below, I provided the list of the active Azure services that supports managed identities. Yeah, so you can check out this site for the complete list of that uh, services. Right now, so if you're a developer and you're using Azure Virtual Machine and you access this one of the resource in Azure also, the Key Vault, Azure Key Vault, Azure Storage, and Azure account. So you don't need any credentials to set up this one. You just need to enable the managed identities and sources to connect to these other resources that supports Active Directory authentication. Okay. So without further ado, let's have the first demo. I think it will be better to understand this if I said create a demo. So in this demo one, I'll be using a virtual machine to connect to the Azure storage account. And I'll be creating a blob storage account, then create a user managed identity, and assign this identity RBAC permissions, and then assign it to the virtual machine and upload the sample file to it. So let me uh, go to my portal for the first demo. So this is my Azure portal, and I pre-created some resources just to save time, and they are stopped. So I just start the resources for now to so I can use this. This I've set this up last night uh, to save time in this demonstration, and I just forgot to start this one. So let's wait for a while to start the resources, because if you don't stop these resources and you're not using it, you're incurring some expenses to it. So better to stop the services when you're not using those services. Okay. So I'll be using 3 virtual machines for this demo. And I think while this is starting, I'll let you show the other services that I'll be using. Aside from the virtual machine, okay, let me check that. Oops. Aside from that virtual machine that I'll be using, I'll be also using the another resource, the storage account. All right. So I just open a new window, and I'll go to my storage account, and this is the storage account that I'll be using. Identity Store ACCN. For this demo that I'll be demonstrating to you, uh, virtual machine. I'll access this virtual machine and upload some, connect to the storage account and upload a sample file in this. So, right, I think let's just refresh this one. All right, so they are all running now. And to connect to the virtual machine, I'll be using Visual Studio Code. But you can use any tools to connect to the virtual machine. You can use the PATI or the PowerPoint, PowerShell in your whatever you're comfortable with it. So, uh, so in this demo one, I'll be using this Linux virtual machine to connect. But before that, I'll be setting up this storage account. So right now, this is a plain storage account with no containers. So I'll create two containers in this one. So let's say we call the container one uh, marketing. And then create another container named sales. All right. So next, before we continue here, let's create first a managed identity, a user managed identity. Yeah. So I've created, there's an existing user identity that I created. So I can use that or create a new one. So for this demonstration, I'll be creating a new user assigned managed identity. So I'll be using this resource group, the same resource group that I used to the other resources that I created. And just to be uniform, I'll be using the US region. And we'll name this, let's say, user identity 2. And click create. Right. So I think this is just an information because I think there's no price when you don't incur price when you use this identity feature. Okay. Right. So the resource is created. This is the user identity too. We created a new resource, and we'll be using this user identity to to our storage account identity store, and we'll go to the. Actually, you can set it use that identity here at the storage account level. But let's say this will be using by the marketing department. You can set the container, the permission in this marketing uh, container that I created here using our back permission. So when you click this one, and to add that identity, you click this add and add a new role. So you'll be assigning this identity to the storage blob contributor. We'll be giving this user identity uh, blob contributor in this container and click the select. And here, you'll see here, there's two user assigned managed identity. This is the one that I created. And you select that user so you can be granted a storage blob data contributor role. Okay, so once this is assigned, can verify it here. So this is the user identity with the contributor permission in this marketing container under the identity store ACCN storage account. So right now there's no file in this, and I only assigned that identity in this marketing container, and in this sales that I created, there's no uh, permission in this one. So only my default user account. Next, before afterwards, the identity is been assigned to the storage account. Next step is we'll be assigning that in this virtual machine. Okay. So where do we go? So you just go to this blade and find this identity in these options. So right now the system assigned identity is not yet created, and user assigned. So this is the one that we'll be using. I'll be demonstrating to you. So to add that, uh, click the add, and again you will see this available user assigned identities. And why is that? Uh, let's just wait for it. Let me just refresh. It should be available in that lead. Let me check again. Anyway, let me check here. In the container, I created this identity. User assigned to. And let's have some refresh with the screen. Um, sometimes it's not reflecting because there's some maybe because some delays on this. Let me check this one. See, I'm not sure why it's not reflecting here, because you should see this one. If not, I'll be using the user identity one that already exists. But it should you should see it here. Anyways, just for the sake of time, but it should be used. It should reflect the user identity here. So I'll be changing the permissions. Oh, wait, let's check it first. Double check if it's already assigned. Okay, so this one. So I'll be changing the permissions in the storage account and use the identity one for now. Oops. Okay. I'll be removing the user identity and add the user identity one as the data contributor. Okay, great. Let's refresh. All right. So this identity, user identity as a contributor assignment in this marketing container. And here in this VM demo, I'm using virtual machine, Linux virtual machine. User identity is assigned here. All right. So now we're ready to use this virtual machine, connect to this virtual machine, and from this virtual machine, I'll be connecting to this storage account and upload some sample files. So I'll be using my Visual Studio Code to connect uh, through this one. All right. So to connect, we need to use the virtual machine's public IP address to SSH to this virtual machine. I have this script ready made. Right. So SSH minus I, this is the private key pair. I downloaded it in my local file. And this is the user account of the virtual machine and the public IP address of this machine. All right. So I am connected now to the VM machine, VM demo machine. And since you can use CLI to connect to the storage account, but I'll be using PowerShell. So by the way, I installed PowerShell in this virtual machine prior to this demo. But by default, this is not installed. Okay. You can use CLI tool, or also you can use other productivity or development tools to connect to the storage account. But I'm not a developer, so I'm not used to coding. So I demo it to you using this PowerShell command. So right now, let's see if there's some existing file. All right. So there are some sample files that I've created also. And let's try to upload this file. See first the content. Right. So content of this one is Azure demo, storage demo. So once we got connected, uh, we will connect through the portal, so Azure portal. And use the identity user account that we assigned to connect through the Azure portal. All right. So we're connected in the Visual Studio. I mean, we connected using the identity. We're connected to the Azure portal. Okay. Now we may need to we'll need to connect from the portal. I'll connect to the storage account. Clear my screen first. And the storage account that we will be connecting is this one, right? The identity store ACCN. Okay. So this is the command that I'll be using. New store AZ storage context, and storage account name is the identity store ACCN. And the user account I'll be using is the current user that I'm logged in, which is the user identity, and assign it to this variable dollar context. And next one, now we're ready to connect sa upload some files. So first of all, this is I'll be changing this one. The file name is AZ demo, and I'll make sure this is the same file name also that will reflect in the portal. Okay. And container is marketing, and we'll use this user account and the storage account verbose just to see the progress while uploading. All right, so we have uploaded this one. Let's check the marketing container. All right, so this is the file that we upload from the virtual machine. So let's verify it if this file contains the one that from virtual machine. All right, so Azure storage demo file. So that's how we uh, upload files, connect the virtual machine uh, to the storage account using the manage identity. And if you'll see here, I've used the this one, the user assigned, right? So we can also use this system assigned to upload the file. The process is the same. You'll just need to enable this one. Like in this virtual machine, VM identity, my VM identity 2, and go to this identity, and you see the system assigned is turned off, and the user assigned is no user assigned to it. So if you enable that and click save, now you're ready to assign this virtual machine to, you enable the identity, the system identity in this virtual machine. But this is not necessarily has an access to this log storage account, right? You need to define the permissions to the storage account. So let's say we'll define it in the sales. So right now I'll be using this system assigned identity to assign permission to this sales container. So I'll be using the RBAC, the permissions, and yeah, click add role assignment, and you choose the log contributor. Okay, the same process, but now here you will see you have two available identities in the virtual machine. You have my VM identity and my VM identity 2. This is the one, the identity in this virtual machine. Okay, and click select, and you're now ready to use this virtual machine again, just like the same process that I did uh, to upload uh, in this sales container. Mhm. All right. So let's see here. Right now, I'm still connected to the VM demo. Oh, I yeah, I'm still connected. What if we try to upload this file in the sales container? What will happen? Will it successfully upload, or will it produce a failure, an error message? So as expected, we did not assign this user identity to the sales container. So that's why it failed to upload. And you see here there's a permission error that happened. Okay. So let's see. Let's try to connect. Let's use this virtual my VM identity too. Let's connect to this virtual machine. This is also the same uh, operating system, Linux, and I'll be using also again using this Visual Studio Code to oops, connect to the virtual machine. So I'll be using the SSH command. Okay, so this is the key pair that I download, private key pair, and this is the IP address, public IP address of this virtual machine. Let me show you. All right, so 1390.146.159. Right. So let's connect to that virtual machine. Okay, so now we're connected, and again I already installed PowerShell on this virtual machine. You can also, again, I'll remind you, you can also use the CLI or any other development tools to connect uh, to the console, Azure. And also, I already installed the Azure modules here. So that's why I can use this Azure commands. Connect again using the identity. All right. So we're now connected in this virtual machine, the my VM identity too. And you can, let's just clear again to give space. Let's say we can, I'll be uploading this file in under the sales department. So there's not much modification with the script. I'll be using the same command I use in the previous demo, the first demo, using the user identity. So the storage account is user account name, and the identity store account, and I'll be using the current user account that I'm connected with. And there. So I'll just change the file name sure it is has the same case format because this is case sensitive. Right. And since I granted permission on the sales container and changing this to sales, and the purpose just to show you the progress. All right. So it says it's successfully uploaded that file. So let's check in our storage account under the sales. All right. So we have this file. Hello Azure. Let's see. Oops. Sorry. Yeah. So it's the same. So that's how you connect the uh, user identity. That's how you use user identity to connect virtual machine to Azure storage account and upload some files. Okay. Now, uh, next demo is I'll be demonstrating to you another virtual machine, and I'll be connecting it through SQL database. But first, before we do that, there are some prerequisites that you need to set up in this SQL database. So this is my second and last demo. So let's connect to the virtual machine, the SQL database. I have no existing database yet, so I'll be creating one database in Azure SQL, and I'll be using my SQL Server Managed Studio to connect to query that to connect to this database. Again, I'll use the same resource group, and I'll name this one say SQL Dev Demo. And I already created the SQL Server. I'll just configure this database to use the low size one because for demo purposes, we don't need that big size for demo. So we only need this one, the small size, and it's much cheaper in case I forgot to turn it off. And yeah, let's go for the local redundant storage, backup storage. All right. And in the networking, you leave it default. Also in the security, and in the additional settings, I will install a sample database, AdventureWorks data, just to have some data in this database. And yeah, let's hit create button. Before, while this is creating, uh, I've done some work prior to this, so the demo won't be that much long. I already created a user in this Active Directory and created SQL admin user, and this is assigned to the database server, the SQL server as an admin. Later, yeah, as an admin administrator database. And also, let's try to turn how the virtual machine. Let's try to connect this one. This is the Windows virtual machine. You can also use Linux virtual machine to connect to SQL Server. And I already whitelisted this IP address to the SQL Server. And also my local IP address, I already whitelisted here in SQL Server, so it can connect to this server database. So you can see it here. So this is the Identity SQL Server database Windows.NET server, SQL Server. Okay. So if you click on this firewall, you see I already added the IP address of this virtual machine, so it will not be blocked. It can connect. It can connect. And one of these IP is my local IP address, just to connect here in the SQL Studio. And yeah, I set the Active Directory administrator. I use this one. So I'll be using this user account to uh, to connect through my SQL. So let's see. So database engine, and yeah, this is the SQL AD SQL user account that I created. So this is, and you will connect through the Active Directory, not the. I'll be using the Active Directory, not the user SQL user account, and it will ask for a username and password. I mean the password of this. Okay. So what else do you need? Okay, and in the database, you see the database SQL Dev demo is created. Actually, you can use this. What is that? You can use the the query editor here to query connect to the database. But since I'm using the Active Directory user account, I need to use this SQL Server Studio. All right, so let's expand the database. And yeah, this is the SQL Dev demo that I created. And I'll be opening a file to set up a user account. I'll be creating a user account, this one. So that I can connect to the query that database. And also, uh, it's still loading. Yeah. And let's try to connect now remote. Wait. All right. So again, if you expand the tables, you will see a sales LP customer here. So you can query this one. Just query the top five uh, rows, because the rows are kind of large. And now, yeah, I'll execute this one. So this is the virtual machine name, my VM identity. You will create a user account in the SQL Server. And that user account, you'll assign it as a DB owner role. Let's say this is the administrator in this one. So sales, this is the sales. If you expand this security, you should see a new user here. named my VM identity there. And that has been assigned an owner role in this database. Now, I guess we're ready to connect to this virtual machine. You use the IP address of this virtual machine to connect. Okay. So everything is set in the database side. We have user, and we grant that user an owner permission in this SQL Dev demo database. So right now, I'm going to connect again through the my favorite PowerShell to query some files, uh, query some tables in the SQL Server database. Yeah, let's open the PowerShell. Already installed the latest version here, and here is the script that I'll be using. So to connect, actually, yeah, when you do programming, you don't. I think you don't need this one because there's some modules already made for the development to connect through the SQL database. But right now, I'll be using the access token of this virtual machine to connect to the SQL database. So this is the to get the metadata. You run this script, and you can see the this is the metadata of the this virtual machine. So you can see here the virtual machine name, the user account, the location, the VM, and the IP addresses, and anything related to uh, the virtual machine. So, and this is the web REST endpoint that I'll be connecting to get the token, access token. And since this is the virtual, I'll be connecting to the SQL database, I'll be using this HTTPS. Okay. So I'll just simply run this command. Okay. Let me, all right. So I'm not sure if this is large enough. Anyway, so yeah, uh, and then you convert this token to JSON format and store that in the access token. And this is what I'll be using to as the user ID credentials to access the SQL Server. So instead of user account, this is what I'll be using. And right now, I'll be connecting to the connection using the connection SQL connection string. And this is the identity, the database server name, this one. And the database name is SQL Dev Demo. So before I copy paste it, this one, let's change this one to SQL Dev Demo. And you'll be using this access token. All right, now we're ready to query the database. So this is the sales. I'll be selecting the top five uh, routers successfully connected to the database, and I'll be using this to query the same query, the sales LT customer. Okay. And if you run the data set, you should see the data. Uh, you should yeah, see this data also. It's the same data that we produce, we queried from the virtual machine. Okay. So yeah, that concludes my demo. I hope you learned some uh, my short discussion here about my niche identity. And here are the resources I've made for your references. All right. I think I'm good. I hope you learned something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, that was a really good demo. Very simple, and
Thank you.
still we managed to kind of really learn a lot about the two types of managed identities and then the use cases for both types of managed identities. I think we only have one question from the audience right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just pull that up for you so I can show it on
Okay.
screen. So it's from CyberPow. Hello, Pow. CyberPow. Can you also configure IAM via CLI? So identity and access
The,
management.
yeah. Yeah. I think you can configure everything is configurable the way that you access the portal here. The everything is doable in CLI and PowerShell. So yeah, and yes, you can use CLI to configure uh, IAM or RBAC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
if you look it up, I think you can call AZAD and then you
Yes.
have a bunch of the commands for creating the managed identities.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yes, that's right.
And
You,
now we have another question for you.
wow.
Let, oh,
Sure.
well, questions are coming. They want to win the
Yeah.
vouchers. So from NF Laronge channel, is managed identity the same with service principals? Good question.
Service principal. Hmm. I think it's the same. I guess it's the old name for that service. I'm not sure, but I there's an old name for this managed identity. I just forgot it right now, but that's I'll try to research on that. But my for quick answer, I think it is the same with the service principal. Yeah.
Yeah, and also to add, it's underneath the hood. They're all service principals. So if you look at the
Yes.
Azure Active Directory, there is a service principal created for each managed identity. I think one difference is that the managed identities you assign to some of the resources, like what James have done. You assign it to a virtual machine, and so that virtual machine can access another resource in Azure, or you can assign the managed identities to, for example, an app service to a web app, so that web app can also call another Azure service.
Mm-hmm.
But the service principal, you can just connect to. You can also still use the service principal without assigning the service principal to any resource. So it is like your system account. If you go back to the classic AD, so I
Yes.
think that's just one major difference. But under the hood, they're all service principals
Mm-hmm.
with different use cases. Right. So for example, it's a service principal. It's like you're a user as well. Like if you want to call, let's say,
Yes.
yeah, SQL using a service account, but not necessarily from a virtual machine, you can use the service principal, just a plain service principal. Yeah. Anything else? We have another question here. Not from the audience, but a very interesting question. So, how much do managed identities for Azure cost? Is there a cost to manage
Ah,
identities?
it's free, so it doesn't have a cost when you provision to use the portal. You have this free trial, or it doesn't incur a cost because it's part of the Active Directory feature of uh, yeah, that's right. So uh, there's no cost when you use this managed identity.
All right. Good to know.
Mhm.
And another question for you, James. So, can you use
Mhm.
managed identity to access a resource in a different directory or tenant?
As of now, you can only use this Active Directory managed identity in the same tenant. So cross tenants are not yet possible right now. So maybe in the future, because Microsoft is progressing and updating their features, so maybe we'll have that activated soon. So, but for now,
Yeah,
you,
that
you,
would
you
be
only
great.
use it in the same tenant.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. I have one last question for you. So when
Mm-hmm.
do you think is when do you want to use user identity versus system assigned managed
Uh,
identity?
mhm. Yeah. So you use the system assigned identity if you're only using one Azure resource, like because when you, like example this one, when you delete this resource, the identity goes with it. It's not. It's like this is the unique identity for this VM identity. As versus the user assigned, you can assign this one to another virtual machines or other Azure resources. And if you delete this virtual machine, uh, the user assigned managed identity is not deleted, and yeah, it's reusable to others. And you can also assign the user assigned identity to multiple resources and compared to the system assigned. Yeah,
All right.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. That's very
Mhm.
good to know. All right. We don't have any more questions, and I think we're in a very good time. But we do have one question for the audience right now
Mhm.
that's also from James. And if you answer it correctly, you can also get a chance to win a Grab voucher from Azure User Group Manila. And of course, I can see from my screen who gets to answer first. So I get to choose who wins. Whoever appears on my screen first would be the winner. So the question is, what are the two types of managed identity? I'm just going to type that on chat as well. What are the two types of managed identities? So let's give our audience a chance to think and answer.
Mhm.
We have a winner, Luigi Ramones, sorry. Luigi, thank you for participating in our game. It's correct, right? System assigned and user assigned. Yeah. So Luigi, I hope we can get in touch with you. I don't know if you're in Facebook or YouTube, but otherwise you can write us on Meetup. Send us a message with your details so that we can send you your voucher. But thank you for the rest who also try to answer the question. Right. Thank you very much for
Okay.
your
Congrats.
participation. Yeah. Well, James, congratulations on your first live streaming. It went really, really well. We learned a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you. I hope
And
you learned a lot. And actually, there's some technical difficulties a while ago, but I managed to pull it off. Thank you.
of course, yeah, it always happens. And I think Azure AD always have this eventual consistency. So sometimes it doesn't show up. It takes minutes.
Yeah.
It depends on the location before it shows up. So it's always a little
Mhm.
tricky. But good thing you did. You're well prepared. So you have some of the identities already created beforehand. So that worked out really well. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing your knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Welcome.
So
My pleasure.
I hope this is not the last. So thanks for joining us today, and also to our audience, thanks for being with us. And if you want to be our next speaker for Azure User Group Manila Virtual Meetup, please get in touch with us, and we have slots for you. We normally have the events scheduled every last Thursday of the month. So we have a couple of speakers planned out for the year, but if you're still interested, we can always open a space for you. Thank you very much for joining us. Maraming salamat po. Magandang gabi. Salamat.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Jane.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Salamat.
Bye, Marilag. Thank you.